and make my dream come true. With Jennifer Lawrence, so it was amazing. So my question is, in Mystique in first class, she's like, she team up with Magneto, but she's still innocent, you know, mutant and proud. But how can she go to, how you can explore that in this movie, how she get brilliant and badass and
well,
everything?
Well, in this movie, she's been on the road. She's been out there she's been 10 years partly with Eric and partly not. So she's kind of become a very hardened person, and there's dark things happening to mutants that's beginning under the surface. That's in the 70s, in the late 60s and early 70s. That's been happening, and she's been trying to root that out. So that's where we find her character. So she's already a much more hardened person, and it's a struggle for Xavier, who grew up with her and loves her, or loves what she was, and then Eric, who's made her into something else. So it's the darker. She's getting closer to Rebecca, as Jennifer says it. You know, let's get that Rebecca hair. Yeah, there's a person. Hand up.
Me? Okay. Being a big fan of Cyclops, I wanted to know what your thoughts were on his demise in X3. And without spoiling anything, if you had any plans to fix that in the new film.
I wish. I can justify bringing Patrick Stewart back because his consciousness was in that woman, I think, in the hospital at the end of X3, and theoretically, if these people can walk through walls and teleport and do all this shit, they could probably build a body around a consciousness, I think. But the other ones, it was tough. And it bummed me out, because I've done 3 movies with Jimmy, and he's a friend, and I wasn't happy with that choice. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff. I love the casting of Ellen Page, and I'm so thrilled that she's in this movie. But that was not something I was particularly thrilled with.
Thanks for being here, and the footage of the movie looks awesome. In a sense, personally, I feel like you're the godfather of the Marvel movies for the X-Men, because you're the first guy to make a Marvel movie. So if Marvel came to you and asked, you want to make another character of Marvel, would you say yes? And if the answer was yes, which character would you?
Wait, would you say again, if who asked?
If Marvel asked you to do another Marvel character for another movie.
From the Marvel universe?
Yeah. Which one would be if you want to do it?
Iron Man, because I could finally buy that house that I wanted. Or that plane. I don't know. I'd like to see some mashups. There's one I'd particularly like to see, but I'm not going to say it because I'd like to first mention it to the studio. Mention it to the audience, because if I do, it becomes a thing. But there's a bit of there's a universe mashup that I'd like to see, but I'd rather not say what it is. Could be fun.
Hi, I was just wondering how you're going to do.
Where are you?
Here.
Well, I got a spotlight in front. There you go.
There we go, thank you.
You see how that feels?
I was just wondering how you're going to deal with the newer characters in this movie, like Bishop, like you talked about mostly about Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and stuff, like those are the bigger characters. What about the other characters, like Bishop, like Blink, like all those?
They're in the future. They're a group of mutant refugees in the future, and that's all I can really tell you. But they're kind of bound together in this last desperate struggle for mutant kind in a very war-torn future. And it's cool. You get to see them do some really cool stuff. Blink is like my Nightcrawler in this movie. Very cool effect, because I thought with the teleporters, with the Zazel and Nightcrawler, we did this, but she's a portal. He throws these portals. So that's kind of cool. And Bishop, his power, draws power from sources and disseminates it through his weapons. It's cool. And Bishop's played by Omar Sy, who's awesome in The Untouchables. He's just a really great actor. And Fan Bingbing is also fantastic. She plays Blink. And then and Boo Boo Stewart plays Warpath. And I think the two first people you see in the movie are Boo Boo and Bing Bing. Literally. Just kind of interesting.
Hi. So thanks again for coming to Montreal. And I saw you tweeted not too long ago that you were shooting with like 1,000 extras or something like that. And I wanted to know how that was like, how it's like directing that many people, and how that can help to a movie or take away or something like that.
Well, here I have to compliment anyone who's done background on this movie. If some of you in the audience, you've been great. They've been great. So Montreal, the background people have been really awesome, especially wearing all that hot polyester 70s clothing in the sun. And we've got this big sequence that takes place in Washington. Well, we're not in Washington, so we shoot it in a giant hot green box. We call it the green box, and it's horrible, but it's massive. And we throw a gigantic silk over it, which basically takes the sunlight and traps it in. But it looks pretty. And so first it starts with extras who are really committed and really into the characters and into the drama that's going on. It's a little tough with the language barrier. Some don't speak English, and my assistant director, who's brilliant, Josh McLachlan, he did Titanic and Avatar. He's one of the best in the business. But he tends to try to intellectually explain to the extras their motivation. And I think sometimes it gets lost in the translation. So sometimes I'll just say, go right, or look left, or But it's exciting to have that many people on a set, all there for the purposes of recreating a real or a surreal event. I like it. It's just weird. It's weird. I have to slip into a zone when I'm directing where I don't think about all the money, and I don't think about the hundreds and hundreds or 1,000, 1,500 people on the set, and I just focus on the shot I need. And except if I see they haven't gone to the bathroom for a while, I start to stress. So I'm like, but it's it's just part of the thing.
Hi, I'm a very young film student, and my favorite part of a production is the editing. So I just wanted to know if you had a bad experience in editing with one of your editors who tried to make the movie for you or something.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. I had a great personal relationship. I didn't have my guy, John Ottman, on a movie. I don't want to say which movie. And it was tough because the guy didn't have a lot of faith in, I don't know, me, or I thought I was too young, or I don't know what it was, and it got kind of ugly. And it made the experience very upsetting and frustrating to me. And so it was tough. But there's an irony, there's a fun thing to this story. The editing room was at 20th Century Fox. And I got into such a fight with this editor in his office, and then I went into his office and saw a scene that I didn't like the way he cut it, and I was so young and so stupid and spastic. It was just upset that I took a bottle and I smashed it on the wall. So he came in, saw that I smashed the bottle, and locked me out of the editing room for 3 days. Like my own editing room, on my own movie. But I'd never had this happen before. I had to get the president of the studio involved and get all that, and it was a whole awful thing. That editing room, for the last 8 years, is the central office of the TV show House, which I produced. It was amazingly successful. So every time I walk in to see David Shore, the show creator, to talk about House, I just am like, I remember this room. I have to exercise it. It's so horrible what went on there. But yeah, that was a tough situation. And by the way, guy's a good editor. He's a great guy. Personally, I get along with him, but it probably was my fault just as much as it was his. I was so tense, I didn't have my guy. That was tough. I haven't talked about that in a while. I'm upset.
Hi, Brian. Welcome to Montreal.
Thanks.
First off, I'd like to say that me, my friend Chris, and my friend Charlie loved F Pupil.
Oh, thanks, man.
Incredible movie.
Thank you.
My question is, you mentioned in the beginning that before you took on X-Men, you were hesitant to take on the directorial role. When you spoke to one of your friends, he convinced you to take on the directing of X-Men. What exactly was it that he told you, and what was it that he told you that convinced you to really take on directing X-Men 1, X-Men 2, and now X-Men Days of Future Past, and producing movies?
He said that Professor X was Martin Luther King, and Magneto was Malcolm X. And if you view it like that, you'll understand this conflict and how, and what the universe is really about. It's not about good and evil. It's about different points of view. And I responded to that ambiguity and to those two characters first. The tough one was Wolverine. I had to understand what that was. It was like, wait, he's a mutant, but he's got metal claws that are put inside of him by someone, and I don't want, that was a harder thing for me to wrap my head around. But then I found that he was perfect because he was so different from the other mutants. He could be my audience's through line into the world. He could make fun of their names and their suits and stuff.
Hi. Well, thanks for coming to Montreal. Also, I have a gift for you.
Oh, I love your hat, by the way. Is that what I think it is?
Got it at Comic-Con.
Oh, excellent. Awesome.
You guys are there too. Well, I know there's been a lot of talk with Marvel and Fox about two specific characters in the movie. Well, I know you guys are taking the same character in two different universes, I think.
Quicksilver.
Yeah. But the thing is, we didn't really heard about Scarlet Witch, which is kind of, go along. So are we going to see her?
Not in this movie. No, this is basically Quicksilver's role in this movie is he's a young character who's in the movie for a short period of time. He's brought into the movie for a certain task, and so we don't, we have hints of those things, but we won't see her in the movie. But Evan Peters is a terrific actor, and there's a fun sequence with him, and I think that he could exist in the future. So, but I don't think it invades that space. That's the nice part about the comic book universes are, as much as you don't want to violate certain things, there's certain freedoms you can have with imagination, and particularly with timelines.
Superhero movies are now more and more popular nowadays. Do you think that it's just a trend, or that in say 50 years from now we'll remember now Western film or musicals?
I think that they'll always. There's so many storylines and so many great characters, and there's so many different ways to reinvent them, that I think you'll see superhero movies for a long time. I believe they are our modern day mythologies. They are this generation's King Arthur. So I think that and they're so colorful and fun to reimagine and reinvent. Like Superman Returns, Man of Steel, things like that. The new Spider-Man, it's just audiences enjoy seeing these characters brought to life. So I think over the decades, it may taper down a little, but then they'll come up again. So I do believe they're going to be around for a long time.